Doncic maneuvers for the lead. 5 points, 4 assists. Pass goes inside, and Tatum with the slam.
Right. I've just spoken for 5 minutes and realized my mic was muted. So, what we're going to do is we're a couple of hours away from the NBA Finals, and we have the Dallas Mavericks taking on the Boston Celtics. Now, as a bit of a preview, the Dallas Mavericks are my team. But more specifically, and I feel that the NBA lends itself towards this, the player I follow is Luka Doncic. So wherever he goes, I'm going to support. But he's the player who got me into the NBA. I was watching him get drafted. I watched him, take on the number 77. Then I started watching his highlights. I love his swagger. He plays Overwatch like me. His number is 77, which is my lucky number 2. Small things. I like his attitude. He's a killer on the game, and I like his skill set. And he, makes me feel like it's not just about being super athletic, traditionally anyway, and, a good skill set, and not even a good skill set, probably one of the greatest skill sets, and, playing to your abilities is what's key. Now, I have the highlights of the season for both the teams playing as I make this run and sort of discuss a little bit about what's been going on and what I feel is going to happen in the NBA Finals. So Dallas's run, they had a 6-game series against the Clippers where I feel like Doncic didn't really show up. I think other than one of the games to take them into the lead, and I feel like Kyrie and the rest of the team really sort of held him through that series. I think he was clearly quite injured, quite hurt. His knee was bothering him a lot. And we saw that even more in the very, very tight OKC Thunder series, which, having gotten through, I think Doncic really came into his own in the third series against the Minnesota Timberwolves and, really showed what's up. And I think he just likes playing against Rudy Gobert as far as I can see. And he basically showed the Timberwolves what's what, and that he is the, potential future face of the league, and putting himself in good standing, winning the Western Conference MVP. I would say that because they're the first team who've ever or one of the first teams who've beaten 3 50-win teams on their route to making it to the finals, and lots of people didn't even think that they would make it into the play-ins, let alone make it to the finals. So this is actually like, I'm going to use football terms because I'm British and we follow football. This is very much like not even a relegation team like Leicester, but this would be like, let's say, a mid-table team like West Ham or Bournemouth making their way into basically being top 2 in contention for for the Premier League. Speaking on the Boston Celtics, they've had the most dominant run, I think, one of the most historically dominant runs through a finals series that we've ever seen, having only dropped 2 games out of 12. Now, say what you want about the run, say what you want about the injuries and losing their star players and the competition, you can only beat what's in front of you. Let's be honest, you can only beat what's in front of you, and the fact that they were playing weaker teams, and the fact that the weaker teams, that's what being the top seed, that's what being dominant throughout the year does for you. It means that I played well throughout the year, so I get to play like lesser quote-unquote competition. And then there's the other argument of the Boston Celtics are just in a weaker conference, which again I would say probably is true. But that doesn't mean, just because you're from a weaker conference, that doesn't mean you aren't a good team. It just means your competition isn't that great. And I would say that it might be a case that the floor of the Eastern Conference is lower than the floor of the Western Conference. But you might actually argue the peak of the East and West Conferences are equally high. Like perhaps there's more teams at the peak, but you can't particularly say that like throughout the season the Bucks and Boston weren't top teams, and the New York Knicks as well. Whereas in the West, obviously you had the top 5 who were vying for the finals, basically. So you had the Clippers, the Mavericks, OKC, Nuggets, and Timberwolves. We just talked about them. But this gets me onto narratives going into the finals. I think I watch basketball like it's an anime a little bit, and obviously Kuroko no Basket. So if you guys have watched anime, Kuroko no Basket is sort of, you know, where I learned a little bit about basketball skill set and how cool basketball can be. And you know, I watch the game for fun. I'm a noob, you know. I don't care about the trolls, you know, the LKIB lot, and you know, Bezos and all of them lot. They can, and you know, the Deep 3 podcast. I watch a lot of basketball content, to be honest, and I would say it's probably become quickly one of my favorite hobbies to watch. But because I like anime and because I like storylines, I think that struggle is part of the storyline. The Dallas Mavericks have a better storyline than the Celtics coming into the series. We have Luka's potential, you know, all-time great run, and this solidifying his trajectory as one of, like, you know, potentially going into the GOAT discussion. We have Kyrie's redemption arc. We have PJ Washington coming from essentially a bottom tier team into an NBA Finals. Just think about that. He was on the Charlotte Hornets, one of the worst teams in the league, and now he's competing for a potential chip and playing significant minutes and a significant role in that. And so I think that because the Dallas Mavericks have had a more difficult run, and they have better narratives, it lends itself to making them the underdogs. We all like to root for an underdog, and we all like watching, you know, struggle and overcoming struggle. Whereas the Boston Celtics is a little bit of playing the villain, and they kind of know that they're playing the villain, right? Like, they know that no one in the league, like no one outside of Boston fans really want them to win, and it's because, you know, they're kind of damned if you do, damned if you didn't, because if they don't win, then everyone's going to call them chokers. If you do win, everyone's going to say, well, of course you're going to win. You had a 60 plus week like win season. You were like, what, 14 wins ahead of the next best team, and you've had the best finals run possible. You've basically had no competition. All of the star players of your enemy teams have all, you know, been injured throughout the series through various amounts of it. And, you know, again, you can only be what's in front of you. It's not Boston Celtics' fault that the narrative's gone this way. But nevertheless, it lends itself a little bit of, hey, it's boring if you guys win. And I'm going to liken it to this. Boston Celtics, I feel like, are the Arsenal or the Gunners from the British Premier League. And if you know anything about soccer, as you Americans call it, but football, as it's supposed to be called, you'll know that essentially no one wants Arsenal to win other than Arsenal fans, and it's because they're really, really bad winners. It's okay being a sore loser. Nobody likes losing, and how you take that and how you get over that is one aspect. You should try to be gracious in victory or defeat, but you know, I appreciate being a sore loser and, you know, whining and whinging. We all do that. But being a bad winner and not having, you know, the ability to be humble in victory, I think that's the problem that Boston Celtic fans, as far as what I've seen on the internet, like what they really how they really come across to me. Anyways, going into this final, obviously the favorites are the Celtics. They've had the most dominant season. They've had the easiest run. They've literally killed every single team. Almost every single game of every single series, other than the odd one that they decide to throw away, you know that they were going to win that. They have a 5-out lineup. Everyone is a shooter in their starting 5, and even a couple of their players who come off the bench. All of them can shoot from free. All of them shoot deep. All of them, that's something also that the Dallas Mavericks, as far as I can see, and, you know, their last conference finals run, like, what they struggle with is, you know, a team who can shoot threes, which is when the Golden State won. So that is something they're going to struggle with. And despite being one of the better defending teams and being the best defensive team in the NBA since the trade deadline, and in the latter third of the season, I would say that Dallas Mavericks will struggle to guard the Celtics, just given the way the Celtics play the game. And essentially, they don't have the starters don't have enough to be able to basically defend one for one for the Celtics team, whereas the Celtics could do that. And I think JJ Redick was talking with LeBron about the finals, and he mentioned this, and it makes sense. Doncic is the most blitz player in the league, and it is the most effective defense against him. And I feel like the Dallas Mavericks really need their role players to defend, but also to perform. And I think that's traditionally what's let the Mavericks down. Basically, you need a role player to not crumble under the pressure. If Doncic is getting blitzed, you're going to be open, and you need to make your shots to make them not feel like, hey, we can just leave this guy free and we'll live with, I don't know, I'm not wishing this upon him, but let's say PJ Washington is cold from free, or let's say, you know, Derrick Jones Jr. just isn't getting the looks that he wants. Then we'll just it's going to become a blowout pretty quickly. Now, I think the pressure is on. Being the favorites, the pressure is always on you. And I would say this is even more so for the Celtics. They're going to be one of, I think I was watching First Take with Nick Wright, and they were mentioning how the Celtics is probably one of the few teams who essentially have the most finals appearances without a chip. Like Western Conference final, Eastern Conference finals appearances without a chip. And that's not something you want as a record. And there is still time, but this is an expensive roster that they're funding, and there's very little future in this roster. It's a kind of win now mentality kind of roster. And essentially, I feel like if they go down and they don't win a chip, I think the narratives around Tatum are just going to get brutal. Whereas, I think, do you know what? The pressure is also on Doncic. And we also know that there's going to be a lot of hostility towards Kyrie and his return to Boston Celtics, given the history and what happened when he was previously, traded. And I would say that just, I don't know. Coming into this, I'm obviously supporting the Mavericks. I want Doncic to win his first chip. I want him to potentially, there's that Jordan thing of, if he gets to the finals, he's getting that chip. One way or another, he's going to get that chip. So I want Doncic to be able to do that. Anyways, game preview. So I think that the Mavericks tend to be cold from game one. So I think the Celtics are actually going to win game one, and maybe even in a blowout fashion. I can see the Celtics maybe winning game one and the Mavericks making a comeback in game two. Whether they win game two or not, I think it'll be tight. And if it is tight, I'm going to give the edge to the Mavericks because they've just got the two best closers on the court. We just know that. And then we've got game three, and I think the Mavs will take a lead, be the first team to take 2 games in a series off the Celtics in this run. I think Celtics will come back in game 4. And then ultimately, I think this will be a 6-game series, 6 to 7 game series. And my heart says that the Mavericks are going to win, but my head says the Celtics are destined to win. With how they're constructed, with the form they've been in, and the run they've made throughout this playoffs, I think they're just destined to win. I hope I'm wrong. I'm gonna stand on business and I'm gonna say Mavericks in 6, but that's going with my heart and not my head. So I'm gonna go Mavs in 6. I think Doncic is going to have to basically be a historic player. If he holds it down, and I'm saying holds it down not in terms of scoring, because if Doncic is the highest production, like Doncic with high production in terms of assist numbers, and they're going to normally win on the boards anyway. Although I don't think they're going to get a lot of points in the paint with Gafford on the floor. I think if he gets a lot of assists and gets his team going, PJ Washington and Josh Hart and all the role players, Tim Hardaway Jr. perhaps gets a role in this series finally. If all of them get hot from free and allow a bit more space for Kyrie and Doncic to just work the floor a little bit, I think they have a much better chance than if it's just like, even if Doncic scores 50, right? If all of your role players score 5, then and Boston like have 5 players who can get 20 each, like you're going to lose the series, right? You're going to lose the game. So you need basically to get your team into the game more than you need to take the game. But you know, if Luka Doncic decides I'm just going to take over and I'm going to drag this team kicking and screaming over the finish line, I don't care. I'm a historic great, and you know, no one's going to deny me the opportunity to win my first chip. If he does that, I think he cements his legacy as, like, certainly has to be talked about as possibly the best player in the world right now, and you know, is making a very good case in a potential GOAT run. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the Boston Celtics versus Dallas Mavericks finals. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know where you think I'm completely wrong. I didn't talk too much about Kristaps Porzingis. I feel like, you know, KP's sort of transfer was a little bit mild. I think it was just disappointing in Dallas. I don't think there's much hostility to him, you know. Whereas I feel like, again, there shouldn't be much hostility with how the Kyrie trade happened, but I think there is, and I feel like Boston is just the type of team who get riled up for these kinds of things, and you know, really get behind their team. So, anyways, thank you guys for watching. Peace. Let me know who you're supporting, and see you guys next time.